Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody. What's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders. You know, we've got a lot going on within this conference. It is up and down. It's really exciting, really competitive, and we got a big slate of games coming up this weekend. So we're going to talk to a couple of people from a bunch of different sites, kind of highlighting their games like we did last week. First one up, Kansas State goes to Morgantown after a big win in Boulder last week, and with that win over Colorado. So we're going to talk to Ryan Gilbert, my man Gills, about that game and about the upcoming game in Morgantown against West Virginia. First things first, remember to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff to the channel. Continue to leave those comments and hit the notification bell so you know exactly when all Big 12 Insider stuff's coming out. My man Gills, what's going on, man?
Big B, I'm good. A little busy right now, obviously coming back from Colorado and having to head straight out east to West Virginia. But I mean, Morgantown's probably my favorite trip really in the Big 12. I get to go see our Steelers play on Sunday night. Excited for that. And, Morgantown's just it's a true college town. I love going out there. So excited. Should be a fun game.
Should be a good game. So it was a wild environment on Saturday for Kansas State. And for me, I was at the game too. I thought Kansas State kind of thrived in that environment, Ryan. They didn't wilter. They didn't falter. It was a different type of atmosphere than in Provo, but it was a lot more hostile atmosphere in Boulder than in Provo. Provo fans are educated. They're going to cheer. It was super hostile in Boulder, and I thought the lessons that they didn't learn in Provo against BYU and just let things unravel, they kind of took those lessons, applied them here, and were able to persevere in a big win against Colorado on Saturday.
Yeah, K-State did not back down from that challenge, especially when circumstances got tough late in the fourth quarter when Colorado had taken a lead really out of nowhere after an Avery Johnson interception led to a touchdown for Colorado. In BYU, K-State kind of folded, right? They hit the panic button, let things snowball, and everything just got out of control in a heartbeat. Whereas against Colorado, they said, "Hey, let's calm down here for just a sec." Avery Johnson, as a true sophomore, led a touchdown drive in just 3 plays. A big chunk of that obviously came with DJ Giddens, who made up for a dropped pass earlier, and then Jace Brown had the 50-yard bomb, which was proving to be the icing on the cake for Kansas State in that game. But yeah, I mean, they did it at home against Oklahoma State. There was a flea flicker, and that was right after Avery Johnson had thrown a pick. And, that's at home, though. It's much easier to just forget about the negative plays when you've got the home crowd behind you at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. That was really the most impressive aspect of that win, in my opinion, was that Kansas State was able to shake off some of the things that didn't go its way because, yeah, Big B, that was as hostile, really the word hostile. I mean, BYU, that atmosphere was 10 out of 10. I think BYU fans are awesome, tremendous, happy they're in this conference. They saw at their stadium. BYU fans are great, but it wasn't hostile, right? It was just different how loud it was. Boulder was hostile. So Kansas State was able to get out of there. Things were getting chippy. I don't know if the refs were letting K-State celebrate maybe as much as it had wanted to. But heck of a win for Kansas State on the road, and hats off to Colorado too for obviously that environment. That made a difference, but also Deion Sanders, heading into the year compared to where we are now, that team is much better than I'm sure me and you had thought they would be.
Yeah, they are. And good for Kansas State. Like I said, that was a hostile crowd. Colorado is a better football team than they were last year. I don't know where they go from here, but just looking at what their team is from last year to this year, they're better. And that's a good road win for Kansas State. Next thing is, everybody is talking about the injuries that Colorado had in this football game where guys didn't come back. Kansas State had some pretty significant injuries of their own in their defensive secondary that everybody, for some reason, just wants to brush aside, where guys did not come back in the game to play. Starters that didn't come back in. Do we have any news on the injury front of those starters yet?
Yeah, Chris Kleiman said that nobody's been ruled out for West Virginia, which is surprising. I know Colorado fans were not happy. They were booing when K-State's – there was 3 plays in a row where K-State's guys went down, and so 2 of those guys didn't come back. Or maybe was it 3? I can't remember. I'm so sorry. But, guys
There's
didn't come
4.
back. It was okay. They didn't come back though. And so if a
Right.
guy doesn't come back, I think he's hurt, right? But that's good. It's encouraging news. It's encouraging news that nobody's ruled out for this game. According to Kleiman, we'll see if, guys like Jacob Parrish went out. Marquise Siegel was banged up a little bit. Keenan Garber, K-State's real, the cornerbacks, the secondary, like you mentioned, was very banged up in this game. And that's, doesn't necessarily fit the narrative for somebody, the pro Colorado crowd to point that out. Obviously, Colorado, rightfully so, man. Colorado was banged up. Travis Hunter,
Yeah.
Heisman hopeful, right? He's a heck of a player. To not have him as big, but I mean, Shadir Sanders, Big B, he should have been picking apart K-State's defense, especially when you add in the secondary issues that this defense has had with its starters, with miscommunications and letting guys get
Correct.
open coverages. So credit to K-State's depth on the defensive side for stepping up in the secondary when guys went out.
Gotcha. Yeah, Shadur Sanders played incredible. Look, people can say what they want about him, say he's arrogant, and he is, all these things, but I think he just is confident more than arrogant. And maybe you convolute the two. It is what it is. But the one thing that I do know is Kansas State put pressure on him the entire football game and beat him up. He was making throws out there while he's getting just cut in half, just getting banged up the entire game. And he was 34 for 40. It was just an unbelievable effort, but Kansas State prevailed. They did what they had to do at the end of the game, again, with a banged up secondary going against a guy that a lot of people think is going to be, if not the first, one of the top 10 picks in this draft. So good for Kansas State, like I said, for that win. Give me what winning on that stage, in that type of atmosphere, because again, and I mentioned this the other day, look, if anybody wanted to watch college football that late, you had to be watching the Kansas State Colorado football game. What does this kind of do to the Kansas State profile? Because I believe not just game day picked Colorado, I think most of the country picked Colorado to win this game, and Kansas State won it. What does it do to their national profile, Ryan, after winning that game Saturday night?
DJ Giddens is finally getting some of the recognition he deserves, nationally. He's one of the more underrated running backs, not only in the Big 12, but around college football. So, players are starting to kind of get their credit, right? Jace Brown had that big score at the end. Avery Johnson, of course, we know what he's capable of. I don't think his Heisman odds, I'd have to double check, but I looked the other day, didn't make a huge move. And I'm not saying he should be a front runner, but there are, people are starting to kind of tune in and pay attention. And that is the value of playing in this late night slot on ESPN. You can say what you want, rightfully so, about the late kick and how tired you are and how maybe that gives K-State a true disadvantage, especially when you add in the fact that they've got to go travel to the other side of the country, to West Virginia. I get that. I totally do. And I'm not at all going to disagree with you. But Chris Kleiman, he said it in his press conference leading up to this game, that it is a privilege. It's an honor to play on ESPN late Big 12 after dark. There's so many eyes on this game, and that's what you want, right? And obviously recruiting, you go down the line, things start to add up. These things do matter when you're seeing, if you're a kid and you see this and you're tuning in, you're a sophomore, in high school, you think, wow, look at what K-State did. Stuff like that adds up, and it's obviously good for ratings and numbers. And so, of course, it's frustrating. The late kicks are frustrating with how late it is, especially towards the end when you're in Central Time. Totally get that. But, money talks, doesn't it, Big B?
It does. But I think the positive way outweigh the negatives in this case, kind of what you said. And just for a Big 12, it's just talking a Big 12 atmosphere to be able to have that kind of eyes. Look, we can say what we want about Colorado, but Colorado has brought a ton of eyeballs to the Big 12. And for Kansas State to be able to prevail in that type of an atmosphere, just first of all, to play in that atmosphere, then to go and get a win is even better. Number one for me, I believe, for the program, but also for the Big 12 in general. Turning the page, though, a lot of times, teams after a big win on the road, sometimes they take a step back because they get a little fat with their laurels. I'm not sure that that's what this kind of Kansas State team is, but look, West Virginia is going to be hungry. Another wild atmosphere in Morgantown, another hostile type of atmosphere. So it should be another fun game. But West Virginia still has everything in front of them. I know they lost to Iowa State and kind of got down, not kind of, they got dominated by Iowa State. They did. But they still have everything to play for. I mean, they've only had one conference loss. I know they have 3 losses overall, but they can still get to the Big 12 championship game. So this is still a huge game for them. How does Kansas State turn that page and get refocused?
Yeah, I mean, the Big 12 Big B is unpredictable. And so I don't care if a team gets blown out or has an ugly performance, right? Like, you have to take everything you see with a grain of salt. And on the flip side, like, K-State just had an amazing game against Colorado, but we've also seen the bad, the ugly in Provo, right? Tulane wasn't pretty for K-State as well. So week by week, it changes. Now, I get it. I'm not trying to disagree that West Virginia didn't play well last week, but it can change very quickly. And Chris Kleiman has to, instill in his squad that, especially, you've got to stay neutral, but especially when you look at what's coming up next week, Kansas, the rival, right? I know Kansas isn't what we thought it would be, but this is a game sandwiched in between some, 2 big time. Not that Colorado's a rivalry, but I think that might turn into one after Saturday. But traditionally, that is an old Big 8 opponent, right? So I don't know if the players necessarily felt that, but with Dylan Edwards, as a former Buff, I'm sure they did. So this is sandwiched between 2 big games, really, for Kansas State. So West Virginia, totally different than what Colorado brings as far as running the football compared to what Shadir Sanders does throwing it. So it's a different type of game. But West Virginia fans, Big B, I'm sure you've touched on this here on the show, but they're not happy with Neil Brown, and so not that K-State could put a nail in the coffin on his career. Maybe I doubt it, but this could just add more fuel to that fire that this upset fan base is with him. And I'm not trying to create a narrative here for Neil Brown or anything, but literally, I just go through social media. They are not
you're
happy
not breaking any news with
Neil
that, Ryan.
Yeah. So it's an opportunity for K-State to build upon that Colorado win. It really is. And so, K-State, great to win that game, but it was only one win, one convincing win, really, Big B, away from home. Go out and prove to people like me that still aren't necessarily 100% sold that this team can consistently win away from home. Because at home, at Bull Starter Family Stadium, I've got all the confidence in the world they can compete with anybody in this league. Away from home, it's key that they build upon this performance and establish, really, Big B, establish that rushing attack early. That would open things up for Jace Brown to have another big game through the air. And so if DJ Gins can get going, like we know and assume he can, should be a successful day in Morgantown. But the Big 12 is so unpredictable that you don't know what to expect from West Virginia. You really don't.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about West Virginia, you talked about it, their rushing attack. I mean, Jaheim White, CJ Donaldson, and even Garrett Green. I mean, those guys can run the football. But Iowa State was able to stop it. And that was the key to them winning the football game. They completely shut down what they were trying to do running the football. Do you believe that is the key for Kansas State to win? Make Garrett Green beat you with his arm, because he has a tendency from time to time to throw the ball to the other team. Now, he's still a scrappy, a good quarterback, no question about it. But I mean, just looking from the outside looking in, you just watch some of the games. While he's led a comeback victory, I mean, he did against Kansas. I mean, so you can't take him lightly. But I think Kansas State, to win, I think the first thing they got to do is be able to stop that running game.
It's interesting, Big B. I was surprised. I was genuinely surprised that Colorado had tried to establish a rushing attack against Kansas State. They really did try, and they ended up with negative rushing yards on the game, but it didn't work. It did not work one bit. And Kansas State said, no, you're not running the football on us. And so, but Colorado tried. They genuinely, the first 3 and out was 2 run plays out of the gate. That was not what I was expecting. I thought they would come out firing with Shadir Sanders, and Colorado tried to run it. And so K-State's proved that it can stop a run. Statistically, it's, one of the top run defenses in the country. And K-State's depth at the defensive line, K-State's depth at linebacker, that's been the key to stopping this rushing attack from opposing offenses. And so if West Virginia can't get going on the ground and you force Garrett Green to make some of those mistakes, K-State's got an opportunistic bunch of players on its defensive side of the football. It's going to be an uphill battle for West Virginia to come out on top. So, obviously it starts with stopping West Virginia's run. But like I mentioned, if K-State can get going with DJ Giddens like we know it can, that's a very easy, simple blueprint to winning a football game.
Yeah. On saying all that, I know it's early in the week, but I'm going to put you on the spot anyway. Who wins on Saturday?
I actually just did a Bosco's Boys podcast with Scott McFarland. I did a little segment there, and I don't usually do score predictions until later in the week, but here we are. I had to give one for him. I said 30-20 for Kansas State. Now, before this game was played, before Colorado and K-State had played, and before West Virginia, Iowa State, I didn't feel real good about this game for Kansas State, but I was shown that Kansas State can win on the road. And obviously what we saw with West Virginia, I know I said things can change week to week, which they can, but with what we saw from West Virginia, the pendulum kind of shifted in Kansas State's favor. Those road losses, road struggles kind of loom in the back of my mind. So I say it with a little bit of hesitancy, but I think K-State's got really, just on paper, especially, a better team. And if they can take care of business, play clean, crisp, not have those turnovers, that Chris Kleiman way of winning, I think K-State can cover that field goal spread and come out by 7 points, 10 points easily.
All right. Well, we appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you for taking the time today to speak to us. On the other side, we're going to come right back with Mike Casazza talking about West Virginia, what happened against Iowa State, and what we can expect against Kansas State. We will be right back.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right, welcome back to the Big 12 Insiders, again with Big B, Brien Hanley. We got my man Mike Casazza here discussing a little West Virginia football. Mike, a lot has happened in 42, 72 hours, whatever you want to call it. A lot has happened here recently. I had a bunch of questions that I was going to ask, and we'll get to that, but I got to start. The first thing is Neil Brown. Those comments yesterday, look, I'll just say it, and West Virginia fans can get mad at me. Maybe they won't. Maybe they agree, but I'll just put it out there. It sounded like a coach that knows that his team may not be as good as what he thought. Last year, they kind of, were over their skis a little bit. The schedule helped them, and now the expectations were huge. They're not living up to that. Guy not handling the pressure. And it sounded like a guy that just said, you know what? I'm going to say this because, really, I've been doing this, or been around football, I should say, a long time. I've never heard a coach answer a question that way in season. I just never heard that. And it's not, you're not inspiring anybody by saying that. Absolutely nobody. Couldn't believe that I heard it. I really thought it was a meme at first, Mike. I thought it was. I didn't think it was real. And then I looked it up, and every single article starts off with that. I'm like, and then I thought, well, maybe he was misquoted. So I actually listened to him say it, and I said, wow, that really came out of his mouth. What is the feeling at West Virginia, fan base, everything going on right now?
How much time do we have, Brian? Listen, I have a couple pastimes, guilty pleasures. One of them is Seinfeld, and the story arc where George is trying to get fired by the Yankees. Yeah. And he's towing the World Series trophy around the parking lot. Man, did that it just that's too easy, right? But you're like, man, this is self-endangering behavior. And then you West Virginia's problem, and this is a phrase that we use here way too much, but they step on the rake. And they'll be going along, and all of a sudden, bang, step on a rake, hit yourself in the nose. You get your watery eyes, and it takes you a while to recover. And all these losses are self-inflicted by nature. Interceptions, penalties, clock management, philosophical stuff. Didn't see this coming. Wasn't prepared for this. I had no idea my team wasn't prepared for the biggest home opener in 26 years. So on and so forth. That guy can't say that. You can't invite the criticism when the criticism is already at the front door waiting to come in. And when you say something like that, whether you're taken out of context or you just did not articulate it properly, deep inside of what he said, there is a point. you've got to get through layers of nonsense to find that point. And the big problem, Brian, is that the message stunk. People are
Right.
mad about that. People are already mad at the messenger, and they don't have time for clarity and corrections. They want to see this get better. And by telling them, I hope you enjoy the atmosphere because wins are hard to come by, that does not do the trick. And it's defeatist, it's fatiguing. It's been a lot of that through the years. This is a guy who did not want to play Alabama coming up. That game is 2 years from now. And he said that game being on the schedule is problematic. Complains about officiating. Does just things that come off in poor form after games or before games. And then to say something like this, gee, we try hard and it's an entertaining brand of football. It's not winning. And this team can play other teams off of fields. It's got to go into the fourth quarter again and again and again. That's not what they did last year. It's not like they blew some teams out last year. And all of a sudden to say that this is going to be a different brand of football, you're going to strain really hard and there's West Virginia kids in the field and you should be entertained by that. That is not the Kool-Aid anybody wants to drink.
No. Like I said, I couldn't believe that he actually said that. And, and again, there's no way that he can come back and say, well, I was taken out of context. No, you weren't.
Nope.
You weren't. You said exactly what you meant. And like I said, it just came off as a guy that, for all intents and purposes, quit on his football team. That's what it sounded like. Now, whether he has or not, I don't know. I'm not going to make that assumption, but that's what it sounded like, that he just quit on him.
Let me put the tape on first. Go ahead.
No, I said it's too bad because the fans, the administration, the players, everybody involved deserves better than that, than a guy that's almost daring them, like you mentioned, daring to be fired because his buyout is what it is. Hey, you want to fire me? Go right ahead. This is what I want to say. It just, I don't know. I don't like the look for West Virginia fans because I know they're super passionate and knowledgeable about football, and they don't deserve that. They just don't. They don't.
That was hard to take in the room, but and I'm a bit stunned by my reaction, other people's in the room reaction. But I think that a lot of us, this is not an excuse, but like you get to speak his language after a while, and I knew where he was going. He
Right.
did not get there. Don't get me wrong, but I knew where he was going, and I don't think that he was saying tough. We're not good. I hope you enjoy drone shows and black uniforms because you're not going to get wins. That is kind of what you can infer from that. Not even kind of. That is what you can infer from that. That's a disappointment, but I don't think he's there. And I don't think he was like trying to get fired for cause, right? Or anything like that. I just
Right.
think it was a bad day at the office for him right there. And a guy who at the very beginning said he's not over what happened Saturday because, again, stepped in the rate, cost themselves the game. But at the very beginning of that news conference, Brian, and I understand it's hard to watch that 90 seconds, never mind 30 minutes of this act right now. But at the very beginning of it, he's over the top, complimentary of the university and athletic department for orchestrating and executing the game Saturday night, which was bring minors to the game. The black uniforms with the reflective coal numbering, the drone show, the Mountaineer had like a black. It was a really cool spectacle, and it got people to pay attention. Like people are checking out on this program a while ago. After that loss to
Right.
Pitt and after the close call against Kansas, and yeah, you beat Oklahoma State, that was good, but they still got a lot of people to buy gear and to come to that game to watch West Virginia against a top 11 opponent. That's good, and I think he was happy about that, and I think where he was trying to go was that, I know my team is not following through on our end of the bargain. I hope you at least can come back and continue to support the good initiatives that are going on from the athletic department. I said that 1,000 times better than Neil Brown did. That should not be the case because I'm not that articulate, and I certainly don't get paid that well. But it was a lot easier to get that right than it was to get it wrong, and he got it very wrong.
Right. Here's the thing. And you mentioned that fans may be checked out. And I made this point on our power ranking show, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. Everything that West Virginia wants to accomplish is still attainable, Mike.
Mhm.
Like they've only lost one conference game. It's not like they've lost 4 or 5 conference games. Everything they want to accomplish is out there. They can still go to the Big 12 title. They can still win the Big 12. They can still make it to the college football playoff. Now, I'm not saying those things are likely. That's not what I'm saying. But they're out there. And we've seen crazier things happen in college football than this. So it's just weird that it's come to this or got to that point. And I get it. You're frustrated. the game didn't go the way that I thought, or a lot of people thought it was going to go. You know, Iowa State came in, they stopped you from running the football, they made you throw it. You throw 2 interceptions, they scored touchdowns right after that, and the game's over because you can't move the football. And that's basically what happened. I understand that, but wow, I don't know. I want to move past it because there's other things to talk about, but I thought that was important.
I have so much
I
more up
still,
my
like I
sleeve.
said,
Yeah.
I respect West Virginia fans.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm a diehard Louisville fan at heart because that's where I grew up. So we've had some battles over the years, and I know how passionate they are. And I just needed to say, I just don't believe they deserve that. That's all. Just don't think so. Getting back to the actual football, it wasn't a great game on Saturday. Look, Iowa State, they're just better than what a lot of people anticipate. They're just a better football team. They don't let you run it. They didn't let West Virginia run the football. Garrett Green, he wasn't great again. I know he throws the ball to the other team sometimes. He did it again, and Iowa State makes you pay. And that's what good teams are supposed to do.
Yeah.
When you give us the football, we're going to make you pay for it. And they did that. They got to be able to find a way not to do that against Kansas State because Kansas State can run the ball, and I believe better than Iowa State. And they're going to try to run it more and better than Iowa State and even more dynamic. What are some of the ways that they can try to stop this running game coming up?
It's going to be hard because they're probably not going to have TJ Jackson, who is their like all conference level defensive lineman who's filled a gap due to injury, become a starter, and is one of the great pressure behind the line of scrimmage guys. He got hurt late in that game, and they're not sure he's going to practice. Never mind play this week. Aubrey Burks, who was their I think their hybrid edge defender, and he's been in and out of the lineup this year. I don't think he's played very much, to be honest with you. Probably missed more than he's played. He's not going to play, it looks like. And if he does, how long? Because he's gotten knocked out of the past 3 games. Those are important run defenders. Their linebackers are active, but maybe too active on stuff. They've been manipulated before by overrunning plays or going in the wrong gaps by being invited in. And the way that Iowa State plays is straight at you. They don't really do a lot of, counter deceptive stuff. Kansas State's really creative in their running game, and with the quarterback threat. Like Rocco Beck did some things, but it was short yardage, try to move toward the goal line. Very different monster coming in the form of Avery Johnson. The breakaway runs for Giddens this year are frightening too. You're talking, 15, I think, runs at 15 yards or more. Just high potential, but also like 7 yards a carry.
Yeah.
He's going to move the line. Their line of scrimmage is good. They use their tight ends. Like it's the personnel formula that's going to give West Virginia trouble no matter what. Now, what West Virginia can do is add extra linebackers to the picture. If you lose your edge defender, Aubrey Burks, you can play basically a forward linebacker. They play like what they call like a bandit, I'm sorry, who's kind of like an extra linebacker, but a pass rusher, but pretty much 4 linebackers if they sub out that defensive back. They're going to have to be big up front. Can they do that and cover the tight ends and also deal with like really sneaky speed for Kansas State's receivers? That's the problem, I think. Can they stop the run? Yeah, but what will they have to commit to it? And then by committing to that, do you leave yourself vulnerable for shot plays down the field, play action, RPO, whatever? That's been the formula for Kansas State. Like they don't pass for a lot of yards per game, but when they hit, they hit.
Yeah, they go down the field, and that's what they make you do. Look, they did it to Colorado. They just ran it and ran it and ran it. And finally, Colorado made the adjustment and just said, okay, we're not going to let you run it. I mean, there was 2 minutes left in the game, and they got 9 guys within 5 yards of the football because they were like, look, if Kansas State is running the ball on us, they're not running it for 2 and 3 yards at a time. They're getting 12, 14, 22 yards a carry. They're just going to run it down the field and go beat us. They tried to stop it, and then they threw it over their head, and that was the end of the ball game. Moving to the offensive side of the ball, I understand that Iowa State's got a really good defense. Kansas State, now some of their rushing numbers were thwarted because Colorado can't run the football at all. They just can't. But Kansas State just doesn't allow people to run the football on them. They just don't. I got a feeling that West Virginia is going to try to get back to the running game because I think that's their best way to try to win this game. They got to be able to move the ball on the ground. How are they going to do that against Kansas State?
Got to be better against an odd front. I mean, I don't understand this mythology about how Iowa State was difficult because they played like a right over the center nose, and that maybe caused some or a lot of the bad snaps. It may also be the fact that West Virginia played a center with a hand injury knowingly and let 11 snaps go bad. That's another story. odd front can be different for you if you're used to seeing even fronts. West Virginia's first number of opponents this year were even front defenses. West Virginia is an odd front defense. So West Virginia's offensive line sees an odd front every day.
Right.
Every day. And if you scout team it up, it's not hard for guys to learn how to do it because they are trained in an odd front defense. So I don't know how that becomes a problem or an excuse or an explanation even. They're going to have to be better at it. And it's a 3-3-5 defense. And if you watch Kansas State, they rarely have to correct themselves in the plays. You may get beat every so often, but like the guy who's supposed to go to the B gaps goes to the B gap. The guy who's supposed to come to the C gap comes to the C gap, and they make you be very decisive initially. West Virginia likes to run, for example, outside zone plays. And a lot of that is being patient and trying to find an alley, stretch it out, find a place, cut and go. If you are plugging your defenders into the holes, that becomes very hard to do. Now, can West Virginia use some gap stuff, power, counter, so on and so forth? They've done that before. Is this a defense that you could find in your sights and then blow them backwards with a pulling guard, a pulling tackle, a tight end? Yeah, probably. Can they do that successfully? They're going to have to. But I think more and more, it just wasn't very creative or manipulative by the offense. You did not try to get Iowa State out of position with play action, with bootlegs, with motion, with orbit, anything like that. That was largely absent from the game. Some of that might have been the fact that they were freaked out by their center not being able to snap it. That could be a problem. It was against Penn State. They abandoned things against Penn State because they had snap problems. Maybe that happened again. A lot of weeks in between those two games, but maybe that's still a problem. So they're going to have to find a way to let that defense go where it wants to go, but also step in a trap that they're setting with something if they're going to be effective. You might win some battles just by executing your play better. If you're going to do that for an entire game, I think oftentimes that probably favors the defense. I think teams that are good running the ball can be beaten by teams that are good at stopping the run because that's what they do. They stop the run. And they have a simple set of instructions and just directives to what they have to do, and you do those over and over and over. It's just philosophy. It's not really playing. It's not a plan. It's not a play call. It's just a philosophy. That seems to win sometimes against teams that are good at running the ball. And West Virginia's running game has been kind of erratic at times. It maybe depends on the running back, getting the right combination, the right hot hand. They play two. They play them pretty evenly. They have not gotten a lot in the running game from their quarterback yet. They kind of said they'd rather not use their running plays for their quarterback, let him scramble and do stuff like that, but they have to move the pocket and give him chances. And that hasn't been there either. So I guess long story short, Brian, they got to find a plan and then be willing to commit to it to make it work. But they also have to be different than they have been because I don't think it's difficult to scout West Virginia. Stop them. That can be hard for sure, but is it difficult to scout them? I don't know about that. And if you're good on defense, your philosophies, your principles are going to line up. You're going to have a better shot.
Gotcha. Look, I think it's still going to be a good football game. Playing in Morgantown at night, I don't care. They've got a pulse. This is not a bad football team. I just don't believe that, at least not at this point. I'm not saying it can't go south. Just like, look, there's a lot of football left for everybody. So things can obviously go south, but I don't think West Virginia is a bad football team. I just don't believe that. I believe they still have some fight in them. Again, it's in Morgantown. It's a hostile crowd. I love hostile crowds. So I'll be tuned in watching this football game. I'm not going to ask you to pick a winner or anything like that. I think it's too early in the week to do that. Having said all of that, man, I'm expecting some fight. Like I said, this stuff that came out, it kind of bothered me. It really did. I know I shouldn't be bothered by it that much. I don't follow West Virginia. I mean, I cover the conference, but I'm just bothered by it because I know what it's like to be in a locker room. And for a locker room, and I can just imagine what the kids in that locker room are thinking when your head coach says something like that. And again, he can come out and give all the coach splaining that he wants. Kids are not the same back when I went to college. There's so much more information that they have access to and that they understand. They get it. And for that to happen, I don't know. It left a sour taste in my mouth, maybe a little bit more than what it should have. And maybe West Virginia fans are thinking, come on, Big B, stop with all the hyperbole. It's not really that bad. I'm sorry. I think it is. I think it's that big of a deal, Mike. I do. But hopefully the kids can overcome that and put on a really good performance on Saturday.
Yeah. Hostile crowd to who is going to be a question, Brian, because I think if they get down 14-0, that could get bad. That could,
Right.
And maybe not they're mad at the players. They're probably going to be mad at the coach, or the coach is there too. They've certainly booed some things at times this year when it hasn't gone very well. And then this does set up for them. Here's their hope right now, because obviously Brown's in a little bit of hot water before he said what he said. The record's just not great, and here he is in his 6th year, and it's not living up to expectations once again. they've played the 7th hardest schedule in the country so far. When you look at opponent winning percentage, they are in the bottom 20 in the second half of the schedule. So the second half lightens up quite a bit. Here's your problem though. Like that's a good situation. Can they make the best of a good situation? And they didn't. Like they had a chance. They had Iowa State and Kansas State back to back at home. And right now they're 0 for 1. You get 2 ranked teams at home. That should be favorable. You can't lose 2. Because if you do lose 2, you lost the hard part. How can you be expected to win the latter half of the season? Just because they're better teams? Maybe you're not. And for a team that is 3-16 against ranked teams with 8 straight losses, hasn't beaten a ranked team in almost 3 years. It's easy to say, yeah, the schedule's better. It's hard to admit that maybe you're part of the problem here too. And eventually you have to look at yourself and say, it's not everything else. It's not everybody else. It's me. It's us. It's this team.
Gotcha.
And I'm not sure they're there yet, and they might get pushed in the right direction, but they're pretty steadfast that this is like a 1-game season at a time. Win this one, you're back on track. And like you said, everything is in your corner to go forward to get to Dallas to have a great season. That's been their mantra the entire year with one exception, which is what we heard on Monday.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's just baffling. But again, everything is in front of them. You know, the season is not even close to over, man, especially in this conference. So, well, again, Mike, thank you again for giving us your time today. We appreciate it. And want to remind everybody, as always, continue to like, follow, subscribe, hit those comments, and hit the notification bell. We appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.